Greetings, and welcome back to another episode of The Greatest Show in the Galaxy, the show where I, the curator, discuss my personal favorite show of all time, personal favorite franchise of all time, Doctor Who. And today we are continuing our deep dive into history in the Doctor Who universe and sort of in our own real world. And once again, I have my partner in crime, which has pretty much become a regular this month, Soda.
Yo,
how are you doing, Soda?
I'm doing pretty good, man. You?
Yeah, pretty fine. I mean, kind of a little exhausted from another project that we recorded and will be uploaded later this week. But yeah, other than that, doing pretty fine. Now, speaking of history, today we are going to talk about the historical moments that are heavily featured in the show Doctor Who, and what is more historical than birthdays. So today, there are a couple of names on here that I think you'll really like, but other than that, yeah, it's a pretty standard, generic birthday section for Doctor Who. And of course, we are counting down from the 9th all the way to the 15th of May. And starting us off on the 9th, we have Mr. John Black. Here's his picture right here. He was a director primarily. He directed The Keeper of Traken and also A Girl's Best Friend, the ill-fated Sarah Jane and K9 spin-off, and Forward to Doomsday. It was an interesting collection of episodes.
Wait. You said Doomsday?
What?
Did you say Doomsday?
Forward to Doomsday.
Oh, I thought you said Doomsday. I was like, you really directed that?
No. But, I mean, one could hope. Also on the 9th, we have Mr. John Arnett. You might actually recognize him. He played Lord Barusa. You didn't watch The Invasion of Time, did you?
No, I did not.
So he played the other Barusa, not the Barusa you saw from The Deadly Assassin. Yeah, I mean, he's Barusa, so naturally he deserves a spot on this list. Now, on the 10th, Miss Maureen Lipman. Do you recognize her from this picture?
She has one of those faces. She has one of those faces. You know what I mean?
She definitely has a face, which is convenient because she was the Wire in The Idiot's Lantern. You know,
okay.
The creatures that literally steals people's faces.
Yeah.
Get it?
Yeah, gotcha. Oh, yeah. Interesting episode.
Yeah, very interesting. We might end up talking about it today, but
it's true.
On the 12th, we have Mr. William. Well, I can't really call him Mr., but we have William Hudges. And I think you will recognize him from the picture. There he is. Look familiar?
Yes. It's Baby Doctor.
Child Master.
Right. The other child in that scene.
Yeah, the other child. The not incompetent Child Master.
Yeah.
From Masterful. I just noticed this right now while I was talking to you. He died on July 9th, 2018. Like, on my birthday in 2018.
Wow. What did he die of so young?
I have no idea. The page here doesn't say. I'll have to look that up later.
I'll do it while you're talking.
Actually, you might want to pay attention for this one because on the 12th, we have a woman. I believe both you and I have seen to some capacity last night, as of the recording of this video. Miss Catherine Tate.
Donna Noble herself.
Yep. Who took some time out of her busy life of traveling with the Doctor to host the Eurovision, or rather to appear in the Eurovision.
And drop a Doctor Who Easter egg, if you caught it.
I caught it. Did you?
Oh, of course I did. I immediately caught it. I was like, I wonder if 50 caught it.
Of course I did. Come on.
Well, because I had a hard time hearing it because of the audience. The audience was cheering pretty loud, right? But I was like, I caught it. Dude,
when that woman starts talking, she has my full attention.
Totally.
Now, on the 13th, here's another name I think you'll recognize. Hold on, let me just say Frances Barber, also known as Madame Kavarian.
Yes.
She was obviously Madame Kavarian in several episodes in the second Matt Smith series, and she also reprised her role on Big Finish in the Diary of River Song.
Okay.
Where she actually succeeded in killing the Doctor. Sort of. Now, also on the 13th, we have Miss Zoe Wanamaker.
Oh, I love her.
Can you tell me where you recognize the name and face from?
Okay, well, to several sources. Obviously, she's Cassandra in Doctor Who, but she's also Madame Hooch in the Harry Potter universe, and she starred in a British BBC sitcom that I loved to watch growing up called My Family. She was hysterical in that show.
Yeah,
and also starring someone who a lot of people have been bandying around as a possible Doctor.
Really?
Yeah. Oh God, he played the eldest son, Nick. I can't remember the actor's name right now. Really, really, really funny guy. Shit, what's his name? Chris Marshall.
Cool.
Yeah, check him out if you want to see him in the British original version of Death at a Funeral.
Okay. She also was in a stage play performance with Capaldi, where he proposed to her as part of the stage. Now, not in real life.
Yeah.
But moving on, also on the 13th, most of this is really just the 12th and the 13th for some reason. But we have Mr. Richard Henry Beale. Really hope I pronounced the full name correctly. Now, as seen in this picture, clearly he played some sort of a cowboy. Am I right?
A little bit. He's a gunfire.
Yeah. Fitting for this episode, because he played Bat Masterson in the Gunfighters.
There you go.
Yeah, he also voiced a Refusion in the Ark. He was a propaganda voice in the Macra Terror, as well as the controller voice, and the Minister of Ecology in the Green Death. We might actually get back to. Well, actually, we'll definitely get back to him this episode, and also on the 13th.
I sorry to interrupt. I found the cause of death. It's not a good one. Not a happy one.
Not one for this show, then?
No.
Okay, we'll save it for after the show.
Yeah.
Also on the 13th, we have Mr. Milton Johns. Why didn't the thing work?
Whoa, that reflection in his eyes. Cool.
Can you see me, by the way?
Yep. You got your hand up in the air, your left hand.
Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you hear me, by the way?
Yes, I can.
I don't know what. The internet went all wacky for a minute there.
Can you hear me now?
Hold on. What is happening today? Okay, for some reason my internet went all out of whack for like a couple of seconds.
We're good now?
I hope so.
Okay, good. Okay, because I could hear you the whole time. I could hear you, see you, everything.
Well, you were lagging on my end. I don't know what happened.
I even put in the private chat that I could hear you.
Oh, good. Because like you weren't moving. I could hear you, but you weren't moving for a second.
I'm gonna have to check back the playback on how that looked, but no, I could hear you just fine. Your whole screen was blurry, but I could hear you and see you. Okay,
good. That's another thing we'll have to wait and see in the replay. But Milton Johns, the man determined to break the stream today, he played Bennick in The Enemy of the World, Guy Crawford in The Android Invasion, and he also played Castellan Kellner in The Invasion of Time. Easily my least favorite Castellan and one of my least favorite Time Lords in all of Doctor Who.
So much so I've never heard you talk.
On the 14th... What?
I said so much so that I never heard you talk about him before.
He's not really worth my time. Anyway, so obviously no shade on the actor. Just, the character is intentionally written that way. On the 14th, Miss Indira Varma. You might actually recognize her. She played Susie Costello in Torchwood on the TV show, and she also reprised the role, I should say, on the main Torchwood Range on Big Finish.
And she was also in Game of Thrones.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I did not know that.
Yeah,
good for her. So
she wasn't she wasn't one of the main characters, but she's like a memorable. She's like an important character.
Okay, that's good to know if I ever get back to watching that show ever again. But on the 14th, and I am honestly pretty shocked that this woman is still alive. 98 years young, Yasmin Churchman. She was the voice of Alpha Centauri in the two Peladon episodes, as well as reprising her role coming out of retirement to voice that role again in the Empress of Mars episode. And she also was one of the many voices of the spiders in the Planet of the Spiders, John Pertwee's final episode. And finally, no picture on this one, but we have Tristram Carey. Really hope I pronounced it correctly. He was a composer of a sort of side behind-the-scenes thing called Creation of the Daleks, and he had incidental music for the Daleks, Marco Polo, The Rescue, the Daleks Master Plan, The Ark, The Power of the Daleks, The Mutants, and The Gunfighters. More specifically, the Ballad of the Last Chance Saloon. So he did some of the episodes we're going to talk about today. So it's
he's
kind of
around.
Yeah, kind of unfortunate he doesn't have a picture. So the wonderful list of people we had today, except Milton John because of Castle and Kellner and how he broke the stream earlier. Thank you all. We quite literally could not do this without you.
L'chaim.
So now we are back to the main topic of today's show. So we talked at the beginning of the month about the pure historical stories with Doctor Who, from the Hartnell era all the way to the beginning of the Troughton era. And then we talked about the pseudo-historicals of the modern era from Eccleston all the way up to Whittaker. But that one, I decided to kind of split it into two. And sort of include some of the stuff that we didn't really get a chance to talk about much from the classic series. So we're kind of doing something special today. That's what happens when you have more than 4 Mondays in a month. I get creative. So I decided to focus.
No time off for 50.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me. So we're going to be talking about the historical moments from Doctor Who, specifically the TV series. We are going to talk the modern series as well, but I thought we also throw the classic series into it as well because, I mean, why the hell not? So obviously, since we already talked and discussed some of these moments from the historical episodes of the show in previous episodes this month, we're not going to stay too long on some of them, unless, of course, there's something that really forces us to stop and talk about them. We're going to try to breeze through some of these, and obviously we got to start off. What?
Bear's breath stinks.
I mean, he's a dog. They don't brush their teeth. What did you expect?
Sometimes it's not so bad.
All right. Sometimes. Of course, we got to talk about the first historical event, the journey of Marco Polo. Now, obviously, as you can see, I'm using the vinyl cover of for this particular representation, but I mean, it's a really good-looking cover. What can I say? And really illustrates
the whole audio. Point.
What?
It's just the audio.
Yeah, I mean, since the Marco Polo episodes are all missing, that's really all we have to go on.
I just had no idea they released them like that.
I'm pretty sure that that's really what this is, unless it's the soundtrack, which is also really good. But I mean, the audio is kind of the only thing we have left, plus the static images and stage directions, I should say. So yeah, it's a pretty good one. Have you been interested in looking this up? Because I promise you, it's a good episode, despite the fact that it's missing.
Well, yes, you did when we talked about it, but now that I know this is available, I'll be even more so.
Yeah, I mean that's just the soundtrack, I think, but still, it's worth finding the missing recreation of it, if for no other reason than just to experience the story, and maybe it'll convince you to check out some of the other missing stories. And speaking of missing stories, we also have another one of my least favorites, The Reign of Terror. In fact, my least favorite of that season. Now, remember last time we talked about that? We talked about the Doctor's outlandish, ridiculous costume. It's even crazier in color, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. It's weird seeing the first Doctor in blue and red.
But I mean, even if all these episodes were colored, he wouldn't be wearing these colors.
No,
it was just for the disguise. Now, obviously, the Reign of Terror mainly focuses on the French Revolution, and here we can see in this picture we can see Susan and Barbara being led to the guillotine.
Whoops!
It's a very dark and bleak episode, but
yeah, no kidding.
Do you have anything positive to say about this episode? Because I don't.
Yes, Les Miserables did the French Revolution better.
I haven't seen it, and I believe you.
It's good, but long.
Now, the next historical event we'll be talking about here today, and this actually might surprise you, Soda.
I'm listening.
The Dalek invasion of Earth.
Okay.
Because, yes, we are not just talking about the real historical moments from our own history. We are also talking about future history in Doctor Who. Because, you know what? Wibbly wobbly timey wimey, future fictional history is also history, because we're talking Doctor Who today. And more so than anything else, the Dalek invasion of Earth, the real one, not the TV movie version, that's a major plot point in Doctor Who, something that has been revisited time and time again. Not as much on television, but mainly through Big Finish, through novels, through comics. It's a major turning point. I mean, remember, by the time that our heroes land in Dalek-occupied London, the Dalek occupation has pretty much gone on for about 2 years already, if not more. And it took no less than 4 doctors on several different occasions to stop them across multiple media, from the TV to the audios to everything else. So it's like there's so many major stages, and because the occupation has gone on for quite some time, each doctor has sort of landed in a different point in time in that time period. Most notably, obviously, the first Doctor, who ended the occupation, but also the 5th Doctor was there to sort of help out with the mutant phase, which, as the Dalek called it, as well as the 6th Doctor, with the slightly older Perry, which is a storyline we might get down to talking about eventually. But since you haven't seen, have you any interest in seeing this episode specifically?
I have been interested in seeing most of these episodes eventually.
Yeah, and again, I have my opinions on the Peter Cushing movies, but this one is it's one of the best. Right. I love this episode.
It spawned basically a pop culture icon, oddly enough. So much so it's appeared in a Looney Tunes cartoon and in a Rugrats cartoon.
Well, I mean, it's not the debut of the Daleks. If that's what you're referring to.
Right. Never mind.
But I mean, it still is a pretty iconic
episode.
I mean, just looking at this picture, they're actually filming on location in London with Daleks.
Which they didn't do that often back then, did they?
No, this was one of the first. Actually, The Reign of Terror was the first episode filmed outside of a studio, mainly for a side storyline where the Doctor literally walks 12 miles to get to Paris or something like that. But this is really the first one that we actually saw outside on location shooting with Daleks in like Big Ben and Parliament Houses and Trafalgar Square and other major notable landmarks in London. So this episode really accomplished a lot. Now the next one we will be talking about is something I think we already discussed. The Romans.
The Romans.
And obviously, as we already talked about, as seen in this picture, the Doctor was kind of responsible for the fire of London.
Whoops.
The fire of Rome, sorry. the Fire of London is a different event.
Yeah.
And
Although
obviously next,
the Doctor had a hand in that either.
spoilers. But obviously next is the Crusade,
Mm-hmm.
which we already talked about. Julian Glover.
Sorry, which Crusades was this? Because there's more than one. I mean, in history, I mean.
Sorry, the Crusade. That's the name of the episode. But
Right. But this is to do with the Crusades, right?
yeah, but like you said, one of them. This is King John versus Saladin or Salahadin. Which one is that? Do you remember?
No, I don't.
Sorry, not King John. King Richard the Lionheart. Sorry, my bad.
Fourth, maybe? Hold on, I'm gonna look that up.
Might be, but since we already talked about it in a previous episode, we won't be staying too long on it. It's just it's a cool seeing this picture in color. Now, have you looked that up? Because the next one, I don't want you to miss it.
I'm currently on the thing right now. Here, I'll look afterwards.
Okay, so in Ian and Barbara's final episode, they were tracked down to a planet by the Daleks, where they had to race back to the TARDIS with the Doctor and Vicky and take off, which sent them on a wild goose chase, being chased by the Daleks across time and space, landing in all kinds of different places. One of which saw them landing in the cargo hold of a ship mid-sail, where they went outside and got spotted by the crew, and some weird stowaway-related shenanigans ensued, until eventually they ran back to the TARDIS and escaped. Then the Daleks landed on the ship and started exterminating people left, right, and center, forcing all the crew to jump ship and leave the ship, sailing through the ocean without a single person to man it. And then the Daleks realized that their target was no longer there, so they went back into their time capsule and took off, leaving the ship completely empty with not a soul in sight. So imagine everyone's surprise when it turns out it was actually the Mary Celeste.
Celeste. I was just about to say that. The Mary Celeste. Holy shit. No kidding.
Yeah. It's a minor plot point in a much larger story, but isn't it a fun one?
Quite a plot point. I love that story.
So I highly recommend checking out The Chase. And now you know what happened to the Mary Celeste.
Yes, it was all the Doctor's fault.
No, it was the Daleks. Don't blame the Doctor for what the Daleks did. Come on.
So it was the Third Crusade.
Which was around when?
Which would have been around 1189 to 1192.
Okay, cool. I just know that they went to Israel in this episode, so that's really all I care about. And Ian was knighted by King Richard in Jaffa. Just saying. Now, speaking of sailing ships, the next episode has to deal with Vikings. So this episode was around 1066, around the time of the Viking invasion of Great Britain. The Doctor with new companion Stephen Taylor and not so new companion Vicky landed on a beach where they found Vikings and some weird, mysterious, anachronistic stuff happening on the beach, in a monastery, and in a nearby village. Someone was trying to help the Vikings win and, mess with history. And wouldn't you know it, it was the debut of the meddling monk. This is another really episode that I highly recommend checking it out, especially since it is not missing. It is all completely 100% intact.
And mostly to piss off Lou.
Yes, because fuck him. Anyway, next episode, this one is unfortunately missing, and even more unfortunately to you, it is kind of the antithesis to one of your favorite things. I apologize.
Okay.
But the episode is called The Myth Makers. The anti to the Mythbusters.
Yeah.
Love so much. Obviously, as you can gather from this picture, it's the Trojan horse story. It's the battle between Greece and Troy. I mean, the episode literally starts with the death of Achilles. So, they land in sort of like the border area between Greece and Troy. The Doctor is mistaken for Zeus and taken to see Agamemnon and Odysseus. And yeah, basically the Doctor gave them the idea to construct the Trojan horse.
Actually,
yeah. So yeah, they pretty much do the sacking of Troy. Vicky stays behind to marry Troilus and becomes the mythical character Cressida. And the rest, as they say, is history. And speaking of history, we are now jumping into the next segment of history. The Massacre of St. Bartholomew's Eve. I mean, we've already talked at length about this episode already. So, yeah, I just want to mention that during the actual massacre itself, they show, rather than showing people getting murdered, which I guess that's another good reason why the episode is missing, they just show these actual drawings from around the time the time period that this happened.
So they use authentic props.
Yeah, authentic artwork to showcase the actual events of the massacre. Unfortunately, I couldn't really find them, but I did find this fan artwork, which also features the drawings themselves in the background there. So
that's pretty cool.
It's a pretty cool image layout. Now, next, I believe this is also the next story done. Wow, we're kind of several stories leading up to each other. Now, this is another one of those future fictional histories, but this is a pretty major one that has to deal with the significant event in our planet's future that we will be discussing several times throughout this episode. In the episode, The Ark. Now, the Ark itself deals with a pretty major event in history, the death of planet Earth.
Oh, yeah, it says pretty major.
Yeah, so this is very much in the future. We follow a large colony ship of the Guardians with all the rest of humanity, as well as all the plant life and the flora and fauna of the once proud, beautiful Earth, leading them to a new world. Did you get why the episode is named The Ark by any chance?
Not particularly, no.
Are you being sarcastic as usual, or really?
Really?
I mean, Noah's Ark, they're carrying...
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Sometimes the obvious thing is staring me right in the face, and it's like, hey.
It's okay. It's okay. Now, the episode itself, I'm not really going to spend too much time talking about, because there's some really, really cool stuff happening in it that would be spoilerish if I talked about them. But all I can say is the entire episode is intact. It's not missing, so you can watch it at your leisure whenever you want to. Just, we got to talk about it because of the major event in the Earth death, which, as I mentioned, there's sort of a unofficial trilogy happening there. They're taking the humans and the flora and fauna of Earth to a planet called Refucius to sort of resettle and restart the glorious empire of Earth. And some things might go wrong in the future, but we're not going to talk about it because it's not part of the episode itself. Next up, we got the gunfighters. I mean, we already talked about it. I mean, it's the story of the shootout at the OK Corral. We got Wyatt Earp and Bat Masterson. We got Doc Holliday, the Clanton brothers. Johnny Ringo also shows up.
And right there, you can see that it's completely fictional because Bat Masterson was nowhere near Tombstone.
I know that. We talked about it last time, but I mean, I guess they wanted to have him there for whatever reason. But I mean,
Bat Masterson, like he was a historical figure, but two, he actually ended up becoming like a hero in like the pulp novels of the late 19th, early 20th century. So I mean, that might explain why he's in there, probably because he was a recognizable figure of the West.
Or maybe they just did the Doctor Who thing where no, the character was real. It was just mythicized a little too much.
Well, maybe.
But I mean, hey, they built the sign of the OK Corral, so that's it. Now, the next historical event, this is actually a pretty major one for many, many reasons, but it's the 10th planet, the debut of the Cybermen. Now, if you were to guess, when would you say this episode is taking place?
Oh shit! That's actually one of the few things I don't know about this episode.
Mm-hmm.
It probably in the future.
When?
Early 21st century.
You're not too off. 1985.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
2
still the
years
future.
before I was born.
Yeah. So, oh, really?
Yeah, I was born 1987.
All right. Yeah. Isn't that the year that Taco was born?
No, Taco is older than me.
No, 1985. I mean.
Maybe I think you might be a little bit older than that. I might be mistaken.
Okay. But yeah, still technically in the future from the point of view of the episode, but in the past for us.
Yeah.
There's a reason why I'm harping on that point of this being in the future. We'll see later. But obviously, this was the debut of the Cybermen. I mentioned last time, black actor playing an astronaut.
Yep.
That was pretty major at the time. I was also the costume, also the spacesuit. Later became the costume for Boss from Star Wars. But here's really the major historical event here: the death of planet Mondas. Now, obviously, Mondas is the origin homeworld of the Cybermen, and in this episode, it kind of goes to pieces.
And wasn't it, if I'm not mistaken, like a sister planet to Earth or something like
that? Yep, a twin planet to Earth. Because Mondas, as explained in the episode, was one of the older names for Earth thousands of years ago.
Oh, I'll be damned.
Yeah. Because, us humans, we have a habit of naming planets in our own solar system after Greek and Roman gods for some reason.
True.
Now we're on to the next and final pure historical episode with Patrick Troughton's The Highlanders, which we already covered last time. I mean, it's not... What?
I said aye.
Aye, laddie. It's not really a specific historic event. It just happens to take place during a time of war. Now, you wouldn't believe how many of these I had to really filter out because they weren't actually in a specific moment. They were just in a recognizable period in history. About five of them were World War II.
I believe it.
And also this introduces us to Jamie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, speaking of taking place around major wars, the next one and the final episode of Patrick Troughton is obviously the War Games. Now, have you heard much about the War Games? The episode, not the movie?
Not particularly, no.
Nothing?
I mean, just whatever it's come up, whenever I've been on the show.
Okay, so get ready. I might actually end up blowing your mind here. So from the title... What?
I said I'm prepared. Just let me get something to cover Bear so he doesn't get brain goo on him.
It'll probably lick it off.
True that.
Now, as the name suggests, someone is having a game with war, right?
Yeah.
So this episode introduces these mysterious beings known as the Warlords, who basically all they do is they snatch up soldiers from different wars and different time periods with a little help from a Time Lord called the War Chief, who introduces them to time travel technology in the form of Sidrats. Get it? It's the reverse of TARDIS. Anyway, so using these Sidrats, they just pluck soldiers from various different wars from all over Earth's history and dump them in a battlefield on their planet, force them to fight each other in their own separate secluded war zones to weed out the trash and find the best soldiers to build a massive army to conquer the universe.
Oh, really?
Essentially. Now, the wars in question they have, like the First World War, some of the Roman campaigns, the American Civil War, the Mexican Civil War, and so on and so forth.
Pretty impressive.
If you look right here at this map, we have the Roman zone, you have the Greek zone, the Crimean War, First World War, as I mentioned, Peninsular War, American Civil War, Mexican Civil War, English Civil War, 30 Years' War, Boer War, and the Russo-Japanese War. So they just took like 12 different wars from Earth's history and mishmashed them together in an area that sort of bordered by mists, so that none of the soldiers can accidentally cross from one war zone to the other, and they have these glasses where they just hypnotize the people into thinking that, into forcing them to take orders unwillingly, and they have these reconditioning machines to sort of force them to do what they want. Every once in a while, they drop a bigger on the inside TARDIS with a massive platoon of soldiers to bring backup to a war zone that has depleted some of its workforce, shall we put it that way. It's a massive 10-part episode that's just also serves as the final episode of Patrick Troughton's era. It introduces the Time Lords. It changes the whole face of the show for a couple of years by forcing the exile of the Doctor on Earth, which then led to the unit years with Pertwee. It's a massive episode. Like, that is how you not only end a season, that is a series finale. Which
it's important.
Yeah, it's a major plot point in Doctor Who. Anything else you want to add? Because I saw you wanted to say something.
Oh, yeah, no, I was just going to say, out of all those wars, there's only one I've actually never heard of. The Russo-Japanese War.
I mean, I really didn't hear about that one either, but you learn something new every day, especially when Doctor Who is concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you would assume that with the Third Doctor's exile on Earth, we're going to get some not historical episodes for now, right?
I would assume so, but I'm guessing that's not the case.
That is definitely not the case, because we also have to talk about Day of the Daleks. So before there was the Day of the Doctor, there was Day of the Daleks. Now, can you guess what happens in this episode?
This is probably another point of the Dalek invasion of Earth.
You are surprisingly correct.
Huh.
Except this time, because obviously the Doctor is sort of grounded on Earth in the 20th century, and unable to travel anywhere in the TARDIS at all. How did the Daleks show up? How did he end up in the Dalek invasion of Earth?
That I couldn't tell you.
Good, because it's not actually the real Dalek invasion of Earth. This is actually an alternate timeline where the invasion succeeded, where there was no Doctor to be seen, and there wasn't anyone to stop them. So basically, they just went on to conquer the rest of the world and keep it. But obviously, with the intervention of the Doctor, that was put a stop to. Next, this is something we kind of need to discuss a little bit, because it's in the episode Carnival of Monsters, where the Doctor and Joe, after having the Doctor's exile removed, and first place they actually land on is the SS Bernice. Now, obviously, later it turns out that the SS Bernice was just a part of a what was known as a dang it, I'm blanking on the name of the device, but basically it's like it's a device that just takes random creatures, miniaturizes them, and puts them in a sort of terrain, like a terrarium, but miniaturized, bigger on the inside. The characters can just live their lives inside that little device, not knowing that they're actually being observed like creatures in a zoo.
It's almost like Candor.
Yeah, pretty much like Candor. So it has multiple biomes.
Gotcha. Okay.
Now the next story we'll be discussing today is part of a much longer series of episodes, The Curse of Peladon. Now, can you, other than Joe Grant, can you recognize anyone else in this picture right here?
Not really, just because it's it's too pixelated, so I can't quite make out the gentleman's face. The other two, for some reason, reminded me of Ninja Turtles.
Okay, that's one thing, but the one with the large eye is Alpha Centauri, which we talked about.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, cool.
Now, why do I have this seemingly unimportant alien planet as a major plot point here?
Oh Jesus, what's the name of the planet again?
Peladon.
Not a clue.
Well, I wouldn't expect you to have it because it's like I said, it's part of a larger series of episodes that stretch all the way into Big Finish. But basically, it's a really fascinating planet, and this really is the defining moment where the planet enters the sort of galactic alliance with humans and ice warriors and various other species around vegan nexus, I believe.
Nice.
So yeah, this was like a major plot point in the history of this planet specifically, a planet so major that has such a major presence in the Doctor Who universe that I decided to include it on this historical episode.
Why not?
Yeah, obviously we have the mythical beast Agador, which the Doctor manages to lull with using a lullaby and hypnotize into almost full obedience.
That is
And
one ugly creature.
you know, when I saw this picture just now, it kind of hit me. It does look a little bit like Elf, doesn't it?
Elf by way of Bebop.
Bebop.
Okay.
Yeah, funny, interesting. I mean, like the Alpha Centauri reminded you of a Ninja Turtle, and now this reminds you of Bebop.
Hmm.
Are you on a Ninja Turtle kick recently?
Not really. Not really.
Okay. I don't believe you, but we got to move on because we're almost 20 minutes into where we're supposed to end the episode. Now, next is an episode that I believe you've seen.
Okay.
The Deadly Assassin.
Yes, I have.
Now, obviously, this episode, major plot point in Gallifrey's history, and we are going to sort of tie it in with another episode that is tied into that by way of what happens in this episode. Clearly, obviously, as you remember, the Master shows up and tries to and rather assassinates President Pendad the Fourth. Now, this sort of left Gallifrey with a bit of a power vacuum as the replacement to the president, Chancellor Goth, also killed by the Master, and kind of left Gallifrey without an acting president, which then forced the Doctor to come back several episodes later, or rather several seasons later. Well, actually, the next season, I believe, and essentially assumed the role of the presidency for himself.
Oh, he must have loved that.
Oh yeah, sure he did, but turns out it was all just a ploy to stop an invasion by an alien race called the Vargans and another alien species that I am not going to mention by name right now because that is a major spoiler, and I know you didn't watch the Invasion of Time. However, now having heard of this episode, I highly encourage you to go check it out because it's a really great one, and I honestly think you're going to like it.
Well, those are some weird looking creatures.
It sort of makes sense when you actually see the episode, and trust me, once you actually see them in action in the episode, you are going to laugh out loud.
Oh, okay, then perfect.
Guarantee you that, and hopefully you actually will listen to me and watch the episode because I'm dying to know what you think.
All right.
But next, we also have another Tom Baker story with The City of Death. I believe you heard about this story a lot.
I have heard about this. Yes. This is France?
Oh, yeah. Also, by the way, the first ever Doctor Who episode shot on location in another country.
Yeah, France, yeah. That's how I know about it.
I mean, this episode really is a treasure trove of Doctor Who goodness. But, I mean, you want to talk about historical events?
Always.
Right? How about pretty much every major revelation in human history? Like the discovery of fire, the invention of the wheel, the invention of the war machine, pretty much anything important that humans have ever done, that wasn't really humans. It was just this Julian Glover character with the weird one-eye mask.
Julian Glover is that really?
That's Julian Glover under this mask.
I'll be damned. I'd always thought it was the Silence. that had to do with how it goes on in human history.
I mean, hey, if you give Stephen Moffat the keys to the TARDIS, he's gonna rewrite the entire history of your show. But yeah, so
Well, it's only fair because the Doctor's rewritten human history how many times?
yeah, exactly. So I think the bottom line here is that humans never did anything on their own.
No,
because you know what, we suck.
We do.
Okay, so now next episode we're going to talk about here is The Visitation, which featured the introduction of the Pteroleptals, an underrated design for an alien, in my opinion. This episode is pretty memorable for no other particular reason than other than the fact that this was the sort of, shall we say, the death of the sonic screwdriver.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Because they went what, 2 Doctors without a sonic screwdriver?
Technically 1, because the 7th Doctor got a new one in the novels, which then made its way into the
movie, right?
Not just the movie, but also the Big Finish Rangers.
Oh, okay.
But why are we even talking about this episode with alien reptile things and exploding sonic screwdrivers?
Well, I'm assuming because it takes place during a historical point, and because it's the end of the sonic screwdriver for a while.
Yeah. Now, at a guess, throw a dart into a target from a mile away.
Is this?
Can you guess which historical?
Give me, if you. I was gonna say, give me like an era, maybe.
17th century.
Oh, the Inquisition. No, that's way too.
No.
Not even close. The 17th.
I mean, no joke. I literally did not expect the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah, I don't know why that came out of my mouth. I don't. I'm sorry.
The year is 1666.
1666. I don't know what happened in 1666 off the top of my head.
The Fire of London.
Like I said earlier, of course the Doctor was involved in that.
Yep. Let's confuse the archaeologists, as he says in the episode. But
no kidding.
The next episode sort of ties into something we already talked about. The episode is called Frontius.
Okay.
Now, remember we talked about the death of planet Earth in the Ark episode?
Yeah.
And they try to resettle back on the planet Refugius. Apparently something didn't really quite work, so they tried another planet to settle on called Frontius, which was unfortunately already inhabited by these slug creatures called Tractators.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's from one of those weaker seasons, the Peter Davison mid-series. But the thing is, we're seeing the continuation of what we talked about earlier, the resettlement of humanity after the destruction of planet Earth. So this is another step. We're not quite there yet to where we know is going to happen, but I guess it just goes to show you that when relocating and trying to recreate a planet, things don't necessarily always go all that well. So It wasn't just a simple, smooth transition from old Earth to new Earth. It took some tries getting used to. It took even more tries in the novels, but we're not here to talk about that in a moment. So now we're on to the 6th Doctor with Attack of the Cybermen.
Oh, that's a weird design. They look like they're frowning.
I mean, have you seen the Cyber Controller?
Yeah, that's fair. It's a hinged mouth, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Which is kind of weird because Cybermen aren't really supposed to show emotions. But at a guess, why are we here with the Cybermen? And I want you to really think about the answer. Remember, 6th Doctor, Cybermen. Where am I going with this?
I'm assuming during the trial of the Doctor.
Nope, this was before that.
Okay. I'm just going to find the image again. There we go. I don't know. It's kind of actually hard to tell from this image.
Let me ask you this. Do you know when exactly Colin Baker was the Doctor?
Yeah, it was the mid 1980s.
What else happened in the mid 1980s? And I want you to really think about the answer.
Could be anything, man.
More specifically, 1985.
Well, other than Back to the Future.
Ben would be proud of you.
Jesus.
No, not Jesus. That was several thousand years off.
Frig, I don't know, man. There's too many things that.
Too many variables.
Yeah. I don't know.
Do you remember when the Cybermen were introduced?
Yeah, the episode The 10th Planet.
Which was when?
Jesus. 1985.
Yes.
Oh, so it takes place during the 10th Planet.
During the 10th Planet, the Cybermen are trying to create an alternate timeline where Mondas didn't die. That's why I brought the episode up earlier, because it serves a greater purpose in the narrative.
Gotcha.
So it's kind of gotten to that point where Doctor Who has been around for so long that it started to cross into its own history in the real world, which I think is really interesting. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't really find any significant historical things for the Seventh Doctor outside of the Curse of Fenric, which the only really historical thing about it is it was taking place during World War II. But I mean, so have several hundred other Doctor Who stories. So we're going to skip, unfortunately, the Seventh Doctor for now, and we're going to jump straight in to the movie.
Ah, yes.
Do you know what happens in that movie historically?
Actually, I don't remember. It's been a long time since I've seen the movie, but I forgot it had a historical moment.
The turn of the century, or rather, the turn of the millennium.
That's right. It took place in the slight future. I forgot about that.
1999, to be specific, leading into 2000.
I forgot that it took place a couple of years before the movie was released.
So,
or after, I guess.
After. Now, I suppose if you watch the movie, in a way, Y2K kind of happened, just not really the way that you think. But not to worry, the Doctor undid it. So,
naturally,
everything's good. And that throws us in to the modern series with, of course, we've been talking about it all episode, the death of planet Earth. This time we actually properly got a good view of what's to come. Because by that point, scientists have more or less estimated a little bit more accurately what is going to happen to us in 5 billion years, with the sun expanding and planet Earth burning as a result. Now, obviously, the timing is a bit off because the blooming into a red giant takes some time, and they do it in the episode in about half an hour. So, I mean, it is what it is. So, this is quite possibly the most important event in our planet's history.
That hasn't happened yet.
What?
That hasn't happened yet.
Oh, it will. It will. It will. Which, of course, then leads us to New Earth. And we've been kind of talking about a potential replacement for planet Earth enough times in the episode, so I think we could move on to The Girl in the Fireplace, which, again, we also talked about last week. But, I mean, it's not really a specific thing, but really the only significant historical thing that happened in the episode was Madame de Pompadour's death, essentially. The rest was just in between.
It was more about a character than a time.
Yeah, and it just so happens that there was a historical moment there that unfortunately just happened to be her passing. And from a tragic historical moment to, what do you say we talk about a happy moment with The Idiot's Lantern, where the really only significant moment happening here which is really the backdrop of the episode, the coronation.
Yep, the coronation of Queen Elizabeth, who we just lost not that long ago.
Yeah, and her son was coronated about a week or so ago.
Yep.
So the timing of this episode could not have come at a better time. Okay, that's stupid. But that's what I'm sticking with.
Sounds like something the Doctor would say.
Mm-hmm. And can you guess what the next most significant historical event that happened was?
Probably Scotland with the Queen Victoria.
No, that was several episodes ago, and there wasn't a specific historical moment there.
True. Sorry. Probably Doomsday, the Battle of Canary Wharf.
A little bit off.
Oh, okay.
Ever so slightly.
I'm sorry.
The London Olympics.
Oh, that's right. The one with the girl. That's right.
Yeah, another case of Doctor Who trying to slightly predict the very near future, as it were. And of course, it gave us this wonderful moment.
Yeah.
That's just.
That's a great actually happened.
What?
Could you imagine if David Tennant actually did that just for fun? They managed to coordinate so David Tennant as the Doctor actually did that.
I actually spent the better part of half a decade hoping it will happen, but you know, I guess the organizers of the Olympics weren't that into Doctor Who at the time.
Missed opportunity.
Such a missed opportunity, but I do believe at some point they let Matt Smith run with the torch for a little bit.
Oh, that makes sense. I mean, he was one of the biggest, basically one of the biggest pop culture icons at that time.
I mean, he was the current Doctor at the moment.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of leading up to the 50th. So why not? Why not give him the torch for a few seconds? Of course, we already talked about this the William Shakespeare episode, but the specific historical moment, which you'll be able to elaborate even further, was the mystery of Love's Labour's Won.
Yeah, which actually was it apparently was a real play. Like it's actually been mentioned once in historical writings. So it just made sense that they did what they normally did, and they take something that is real, but nobody really knows much about, and gave it their own Doctor Who twist on it. But it was in fact a real play that was performed one time only, and that's it. They've never found it. Nobody knows what happened to it, and that's the only time it was ever mentioned.
Yeah, and these gaps in history is perfect for Doctor Who episode material.
Not just Doctor Who, it's perfect for any time you want to do a historical episode, no matter what.
Yeah, but I mean, usually Doctor Who is the franchise that has the cojones to do something like that, right?
Yeah.
Now, the next historical event we're going to talk about today is, of course, the Great Depression, and with the two-parter in 1930s New York. Obviously, most of what happened in the episode is kind of real. With the construction of the Empire State Building, Hooverville, and as I mentioned, the Great Depression. And I think since it has the word depression on it, I don't really want to talk about it too much.
The only bright spot of that episode is the introduction of Andrew Garfield.
Yes. I wish he had more time as Spider-Man, but at least Far From Home. Sorry, No Way Home.
Hey man, at least we got a beautiful epilogue.
Yeah. Yeah. The pig and the showgirl. Now, for Utopia, obviously the major thing here is the Master is back, but we also really got to talk about, we talked about the end of the Earth so many times in this episode, we never even stopped to consider the end of the universe.
And that's what this is.
Yeah, the end of the universe. As you can see in the background behind the Doctor and friends. I mean, that's what the human race becomes.
Yep.
If we don't get to Utopia. Which is it is a scary thought overall, right?
A little bit.
And speaking of scary thoughts, how about the scariest thought ever, being buried alive by volcanic ash in the fires of Pompeii. Yeah.
Peter Capaldi's first time in a Doctor Who episode, Karen Gillan's first time in a Doctor Who episode, and takes place during one of the most important moments in human history.
Yeah, and also Tracy Childs' Doctor Who debut. Well, not really the debut, but an appearance by Tracy Childs. That's all I'm going to say. Now, we didn't get too much of a chance to talk about it when we did the other historical episode thing. So, do you want to elaborate a little bit more, or is that all you got?
Well, basically, Pompeii is in a nutshell, is basically the volcano erupted and it completely coated this town in volcanic in lava and what have you. And then they eventually found it many centuries later, and they're still excavating it. They've found pockets where bodies decomposed. You can still see where they fell and lied. We've learned a lot about what civilization was like back then from excavating Pompeii. Like it is a significant moment in history, or as the Doctor would say, it's a fixed point in time. It happened. It happened.
And what's both fascinating and horrifying is that the humans who were buried there were literally they stayed in the same pose that they were when he died. It's like, so you know, like when they find dinosaur bones or whatever, fossilized dinosaur bones, they're not quite at the same position that they were.
It's basically the inverse. Like with those, you get the bones. With these, you just get the pocket. And they found like people like holding their loved ones. They found impressions of animals and stuff like that. Like, yeah.
And it's frighteningly close to what would happen in a potential nuclear holocaust.
Yeah, pretty much.
People would stay printed on the walls
in
the same positions that they were when it happened. And enough gloominess, because this picture right here.
Yes.
This picture just puts a smile on your face. If he only knew.
Right.
If he only knew. I mean, doctor and doctor, companion and companion.
Yeah, and what I love is that they actually ended up kind of bringing that back when he returned as the Doctor.
Yeah. I know where I got this face, and I know what it's for.
Yeah. Never forget a face. I love it.
Never forget a face. Unless it's the Master. Now, we also talked a little bit about the Agatha Christie stuff. You know, again, just like with the William Shakespeare thing, certain gaps in history that gives Doctor Who and other franchise some place to play around in. Would you like to expand on what we said last week, or?
So basically, what happened was there was a point in time where Agatha Christie herself actually did disappear. There is no trace of what happened to her, and she, next thing you know, she did appear at a spa, just like she does in the episode. So I mean, it gave the perfect opportunity to do the supernatural explanation as to what happened.
Yeah, and what really happened, we may never know. Now we're back to sort of the future history with Bowie Base 1 in the waters of Mars, where
I hate that makeup. Like, I mean, I like the makeup because it's good, but I hate the makeup because it's creepy.
Yeah, it even terrified Taco to his bones. Now, in the year 2057, the first human colony on Mars had settled. They founded Bowie Base 1, and they've been living there for about 2 years before things went south really, really badly with the people with the incredibly scary makeup, drowning the base and flooding the people there with infected water, leading to the destruction of the base, which then caused the death of Adelaide Brooke, originally the original timeline, and inspired her granddaughter to go out into the stars and really just bring the human race further and further into the stars. It's like Pompeii. It's a major, major historical event in the Doctor Who universe that the Doctor very selfishly changed, but, you know.
Yeah, it's an incident where he tried to change a fixed point in time. He got selfish during this point in his life.
Yeah, which then led to him becoming the Time Lord victorious, and that's a story for me. But we will get back to this plot point eventually. I promise you that. But the next one and the final one for Tennant. The what?
So I like those episodes, those 4 specials they did.
Me too. And of course, the final one is our final historical moment. Not specifically a moment, but I mean, it introduces the idea of the final day of the Time War. Which up until that point, we didn't really know that much about the Time War. We just know that it happened. It was a pretty nebulous thing at its time. Yeah. But at this episode introduces the idea of the final sanction, which is finally explains why the Doctor did what he did. And
yeah,
of course,
like you said, like we didn't really know much when we meet Eccleston's Doctor. Yeah, I was in the Time War. Yeah, Time War. Yeah, I ended it, and that's it. That's all we got.
Now that's all we really needed. Of course, now in our times, we know so much more about the Time War than we did back then. But I'm kind of saving that for an entire monthly themed around the Time War itself. And from one war to the other, World War II again. Like I said, I had like 5 or 6 episodes referencing that were taking place in and around the World War II. But I think this one is really the most significant because that is really on the TV side. That is when we learn of the special bond that the special relationship, I should say, that all the Doctors have with Winston Churchill. And of course, it led to very many great stories there.
And this is an alternate timeline where a Dalek is helping the Brits.
I am your soldier. And we already talked about this again, but we got to bring up the Van Gogh episode again, right? Of course. Because it is technically a historical moment, the painting of the cathedral that he paints in the movie, and in the episode, that is a historical moment, technically. And you know what? It's a really great episode, so we got to talk about it again. Anything else you want to add before we move on to another?
No, I did everything I needed to say. I said last week about Van Gogh.
Cool. Next up, we have the moon landing with the Impossible Astronaut and Day of the Moon.
First time Doctor Who were filmed in the United States.
Yep. A lot of firsts in this episode right here that we're doing, and of course, it sort of gives us a little bit more of the storyline going on between the Doctor and River Song. But I mean, the major plot point here is the moon landing and the silence. And of course, like we said earlier, human beings never did anything on their own. They always had help from other beings.
And also introduce something for Doctor Who fans in general, which is the use of tally marks.
Yeah, which became a cultural phenomenon amongst the Doctors.
I will admit, I have thought to getting tattooed on my body.
Are you still on that line of thought, by the way?
It's bounced around my head for about a decade.
Yeah, it'll be cool, but the main problem with something like that is I don't think anyone seeing it would get the joke.
That's the point. It's only for certain people, right?
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's kind of like, hey, you're a Doctor Who fan, so am I. Like it's one of those type of things.
Yeah.
And like I've already got the screwdriver, but I mean it's kind of buried in a very bigger thing, right?
Yeah. And for someone who's not into Doctor Who, it's like, oh, you're Victor Zsasz.
Yeah, pretty much. Right?
Yeah, maybe that's a good motivation to not get that tattoo made.
Touché.
But of course, we talked about World War II earlier. Let's get back to World War II again for Let's Kill Hitler.
Yep, a fun episode.
Yeah, the historical moment there is obviously River Song.
Yeah,
regenerating. But I mean, other than that, just Rory take Hitler and put him in the cupboard. Now, strangely, this is where, for a while at least, we're sort of lacking in the historical episodes department. I mean, the big major one is, of course, Day of the Doctor. It's a major historical episode, not just for Planet Earth with the introduction of the Zygon. Sorry, it's not just for real world Planet Earth with Queen Elizabeth I. Not just for the fictional Planet Earth of Doctor Who with the introduction of the Zygons. It is the episode that ended the Time War, essentially. Like, finally and proper. Because, the Time War, being a Time War, it's never really quite over until it's actually over. Mm-hmm. And I think this episode really did sort of hit the nail on the head that, like, it's gone. There is no Time War anymore until we get, of course, to the next episode with the Time of the Doctor, where really the main historical event here, it's not a earthbound historical event per se, but it's just the 800 years that the Doctor spent on Trenzalore, defeating a human colony, which is technically still part of planet Earth. So,
True.
So before we move on to our next Doctor, do you have anything else you would like to add
On
these two episodes?
Just good night, Raggedy Man.
You said that backwards, but never mind.
I know I did. I did realize it afterwards.
And the Raggedy Man did went to sleep, leading the way to a new Raggedy Man, who at one point decided to kill the moon.
Yep, and he was kind of a dick when we first meet him.
Yeah, that's the main problem I have with early Capaldi. But, I mean, this episode, it's pretty outlandish. It's very out there. Yeah, so the moon is an egg now. How does that make you feel?
Not so excellent.
I mean,
I heard the groan.
I saw a news article recently, like from a couple of days ago, a new news article saying that the actual crust of the moon is like an outer shell, and there's like a secondary shell underneath with potentially something inside it that is very sort of has a somewhat liquid core. And I'm reading that article. I'm like, oh my goodness, maybe the moon is an egg after all.
Maybe. Wow, that's weird.
If it is, we might actually end up learning about it in our own lifetimes, because this episode actually takes place in the year and around the 2040s. Which at the end of the major historical moment here, this is why I brought this episode up, is that the Doctor at the end of the episode uses his Time Lord whatever powers to see into the future, and what he sees is that this new revelation will convince humans to regain their interest in space travel and go back to flying through space and trying to reach other new exciting worlds. Because just like in the real world, we sort of lost our interest in space travel until very recently, and this episode really brought it back to really lit the fire for the humans again to go out and explore, which then ties into the waters of Mars. Around 17 years later, we landed people on Mars and established the first human colony, which, of course, as I mentioned, was destroyed and then led to Adelaide's granddaughter continuing her legacy by spreading across the stars. And in the 2070s, we go back to a Patrick Troughton era episode called The Moon Base, where apparently it turns out after 30 years of the second moon hatch, or rather being laid by the hatchling, the humans have established a base on the moon meant to for weather controlling purposes. Now, the episode itself is a Cyberman-centric episode, but I feel it's kind of cool that three completely different writers from three completely different Doctors in three completely different eras of the show, decades even, sort of, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but they sort of had this trilogy of episodes, an unofficial trilogy that was done backwards from the 2070s to the 2050s to the 2040s.
Interesting.
So again, I brought it up only because of the interesting factor there. But
yeah, I don't think there was a plan. There's no way you could plan that.
I mean, I will admit I can see Stephen Moffat doing something like that to connect the dots in his own way, but as planned as it is right now, doubtful.
Yeah.
And speaking of Stephen Moffat's writing, writing things backwards, I mean, if you have any tissues, get them ready because.
Oh. Hello, sweetie. Oh, that moment when she realizes who he is. Oh my God.
Now, I was considering having this as a gift, but I mean, this is really all you need, right?
Yeah, that's all you need to know.
Yeah, the
one night in, 25 years?
24 years.
Close enough.
And as the episode suggests, and they lived happily ever after.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
because as we know, right after this, she goes to the library and never comes back.
Physically, that is.
That's true.
But we spent a lot of this episode talking about historical moments in Earth and other planets. I mean, this is for the Doctor and River, I think. But this was not really the end for the Doctor, and the end of historical events, because we jump straight into Jodie Whittaker with Rosa Parks.
Yep, one of the most landmark moments in United States history.
And as the episode itself seems to suggest, human history.
Yeah,
as a whole.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah, and the tragedy that the Doctor and friends have to be the white people on the bus.
Yeah,
that forced Rosa Parks to do what she did. And I mean, good on her for doing it and sticking to her guns, but you just can't help but feel sorry for the Doctor and Graham,
especially Graham.
Yeah, especially Graham, because he's like the kindest, sweetest soul you're ever going to meet, and in this scenario, he's kind of forced to being the asshole white male, essentially. And we who watch the show know that he's definitely not like that. He's not that type of person, but he has to for the sake of history. And speaking of things that have to happen for the sake of history, there's also the demons of the Punjab with the 1948 or 49 partition of India. And what we're basically seeing here, a literal case of brother turning against brother. Like, really? The symbolism here in this episode is great. Like, the Indians turning on the Pakistani and the Pakistanis are turning on the Indians. I mean, the episode itself really does suggest that underneath, we're all humans underneath. Doesn't matter our skin color, our backgrounds, our religion, our language. None of it matters. And what better way to represent that by literally having brother killing his own brother?
We all pee the same color at the end of the day. That's actually a line from a movie, actually.
I disagree with that line, but I mean, we'll save that for discussion after the show. And speaking of another historical event that I think you're very, very familiar with, the haunting of Villa Diodati.
Am I?
I mean, Mary Shelley, Lord Byron.
Oh, sorry, yes. I didn't realize that was the name of the episode. Sorry.
Yeah, that's the name of the episode, and I think that's also the name of the villa, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah. So that's how Frankenstein was born.
Basically, yeah, like that is a historical night for a different reason, because not only does Frankenstein come out of there, but also the seed that was planted of what eventually became Dracula also started there. Basically, the idea of the modern vampire myth as we know it comes from that same time, that same weekend, same night.
Yeah. And how did this whole night even came about? Kaboom.
Yep.
It's weird how much volcanoes have an effect on, long-lasting effect on human history.
Yeah, who knew?
Yeah, and now we have, well, I mean, literally, they created the islands or rather the land masses that we're standing on right now. And now we're on to the final historical event we'll be talking about tonight, War of the Sontarans. I mean, it's kind of unfortunate that I had the picture on. No one saw how quickly you turned your head back to the screen.
Sorry, it was my dog. I was petting my dog.
Yeah, and apparently the word Sontaran gets you riled up more than your dog does.
I love, well, distracts.
Yes, and of course, as is expected, Dan Starkey returns, not as Strax, but, him and Christopher Ryan back playing Sontarans in what I consider one of the best Sontaran episodes. In fact, might be my favorite of the modern series. Not that there's that much to pick from, but this and Invasion of Time, two episodes that Raiko absolutely hates, are two of my number one and number two favorite Sontaran episodes, and they constantly switch between each other. I just love them both so much. So basically, what is the historical moment here, if you could tell?
I don't know, but I got a feeling it takes place in the past in the United Kingdom. It's based on the scenery.
Past, yes. United Kingdom, not so much.
Oh, okay. Well, where does it take place?
It's basically the Crimean War.
Oh,
Just replace the Russians with Sontarans.
Gotcha.
It was a sort of part of an experiment that the Sontarans did to see if one of their new tech works. And why would you say they picked the Crimean War?
Well, if it has to do with Russians, because they both have something in common with potatoes. One uses them to make vodka, the other one looks like one.
Okay, that's an interesting point, but to be honest, the Sontaran commander in the episode says it himself. He really wanted to ride a horse.
I think that's a good enough reason.
Yeah. So, massive war between humans and Sontarans on the battlefields of Earth.
That's intense.
What a great way to end this episode. Now, before we move on, though, there's something I think that bears mentioning here is that from officially released pictures, we do know that Ncuti Gatwa's 15th Doctor will at least at some point be traveling to the 1960s.
Yep.
As seen in this picture. And to wherever this is.
This one got my attention because of Jonathan Groff.
I mean, this one got my attention because he's literally wearing John Pertwee's velvet coat.
Well, I mean, yeah, that too. But I mean, this is because it has Jonathan Groff in it. But I mean, like, look at the freaking image. It looks cut. Like, my God,
it looks amazing.
Yeah, this is easily going to be the most stylish era of Doctor Who.
I honestly have a feeling that Ncuti's going to have a different outfit in every single episode.
Hey man, I'm all for that. Have Ncuti's Doctor be, blend into their time period. Give me that.
Yeah, I mean, it's something we've never seen a Doctor do. They always wear the same thing.
Anyone can pull it off. It's him.
Yeah,
he's got the charisma to do it,
and the fashion sense.
That too.
And what I love most about it, I mean, he even changes his hair. I mean,
Totally.
I wonder if that's really some new Time Lord thingamabob.
Although it kind of looks like Little Richard in that last picture.
Yeah. But you know what my favorite thing about this is?
The blonde?
Well, yes, that too. But he's wearing the same rings. Even though he changes the costume, he's always wearing those rings. And I love that.
Oh, that's pretty cool.
I like me a Doctor with bow
ties.
What?
This would be like his bow tie.
Yeah, I suppose so. Now,
like every Doctor has a thing. Capaldi had the sunglasses. Matt Smith had the bow tie and the fez. Tennant had the 3D glasses.
Mm-hmm. And of course, Baker had the scarf.
Yep,
but
and jelly babies.
Yeah, that too. And of course, the celery for Davison.
Yep, the question marks for 7.
The question marks were 4, 5, 6, and 7.
That's right. Those were earlier. Yeah, sorry. I guess the question mark cane. Or is that an umbrella?
The umbrella.
Umbrella, yes.
Umbrella. Now, also the recorder for Troughton.
Yep.
Now, if I could play devil's advocate for a second. Okay? Devil's advocate. We're seeing Ncuti Gatwa going back to the 60s, which, in a way is around the time when this episode took place in.
A decade later, but go on.
Well, I mean, it's not really clear if it's the 60s or 50s.
Oh, that's 60s.
Definitely 60s?
Oh, that's definitely 60s. The hair is a dead giveaway.
All right. But we also got this, right?
Yeah, that's probably the 17th century, maybe the 18th century.
Yeah, which is around the time where this takes place in. So, you
don't
get
go back and visit prior events, do you?
No, I'm just saying. Don't you think it's a little bit of Russell T retreading his own steps a little bit?
Well, I mean, you can make that argument a bit. Well, maybe, but you got to remember though that the Doctor has gone back to the same things before. So, I mean,
yeah, but the reason I'm asking is because it's the same showrunner doing it, not the Doctor.
But we're also jumping to conclusions before we see the episodes, right?
I'm just trepidatious. That's all. I'm not saying anything. I was asking.
If I'm being honest, no. It's a show about time travel. Anything's open. So for me, I don't think he's going to the well too many times. Unless he goes back to the same events, then we'll have to wait and see.
I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah.
I think Ross is smarter than this. But, you know, I'm a little bit nervous. That's all I'm going to say. And I think it's my idea to do that. I think
he'll definitely do him well. Like, some of his better ones were those historical episodes.
Yeah, but it's not really the historical part that I'm bothered with. It's because we're kind of seeing them going back to similar and very close time periods from one another. I just really hope it doesn't end up being the same storylines. And you know what? We now have an opportunity we didn't have before, which is now we have an ongoing regular Black Doctor. Okay? So I hope they lean more into that aspect more so that
I wouldn't doubt that they lean into like the race aspect of it and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I mean, because in a show about time travel where you have a lead actor of a color, there are certain areas where people of color wouldn't be accepted in as much. And of course, the Doctor is that type of character that breaks the mold. And he's like, no, I'm not the problem. You're the problem. So I hope they do a lot of that. In my opinion, they didn't do a good job with that with Jodie Whittaker. They did some episodes, but not enough to, I think a lot of it got really glossed over and lost in the mix with all the Timeless Child shenanigans. But
that's fair.
I just really hope Russell's going to do justice to Shooty's Doctor. That's all I'm saying.
I think he will.
Yeah, I'm sure he will. But
yeah, I mean, we know what this man is capable of.
Obviously, especially with his more recent work outside of Doctor Who.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's it. So, but all the stuff we talked about right now, that is a story for another time. So, Mr. Soda, to wrap up this history lesson, where can people find you, sir?
Well, you can find me over on my personal Instagram and Twitter at soda_the_saxman. You can find me on this channel with 50 on Fun with Flags. You can also find me most of the time over here as well on Great Show of the Galaxy. Occasionally on Hotel Network, doing live watch-alongs of Monday Night Raw, Friday Night SmackDown, and then coming up at the end of the month, the launch of mine and my buddy's wrestling channel.
Which you might find me there.
That's right, yes.
But another place you can find me is every Monday doing this show, every Thursday doing Fun with Flags with this guy, and also my own YouTube channel, 50 Shades of Geek, where I talk even more Doctor Who than I do on this show. So something to look forward to, and also do other stuff whenever I have time and the resources to do so. And I seem to have there it is. We also have other shows on this mini network. Obviously, we've got Have You Seen This with Snark, Daniel, and Dave. But also on other channels, we've got Something to Talk About, Taco's channel. We've got Luke's channel, Galaxy Geeks, The Multiverse of Geekdom, Ben's Legacy channel, The Movie Lovers Unite, Midnight Cinema, and A-Town Reviews. So lots of cool, fun places where you can check out lots of interesting people doing great stuff. And yeah, I think we've said all we can say. So until the next time, in the words of Missy herself,
don't forget to like and subscribe.
Goodbye.